Hi everyone, welcome to Bible Drill Home Kit week number 1. My name is Gina McKean and we are going to walk with you through the activities that are assigned to week number 1. And verse number 1, which is Genesis 1:27, and that verse says, "So God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them male and female." Genesis 1:27. So for the activity that we have for that particular verse, you would need kit item 1A, which looks like this, and you would print out this sheet and give each child one of the verses that looks just like this. And as you look at it, you will notice that it is backwards. And so what the kids are going to do is use their Bible or a pre-printed verse that you have for them to be able to fill in the missing words. Now, to write the words backwards is very difficult, so we have a helpful little tip. If you will take this sheet and put it face down, then the children can take a Sharpie and they can write in the missing words. Now, if you're using a darker surface, then you'll probably want to take a white sheet and put it underneath there so that now you can see the words on the back side. And they'll take the Sharpie, write in the missing words, and then it's going to look like this. So here's the back side of the sheet where you see the words written in for the missing parts. And when you flip it over, the Sharpie has bled through, so now you can actually see the words, and the kids are going to use a mirror, and they're going to read that verse. This is called reverse verse, and here's what they're going to do. They're going to hold the mirror up, and they're going to read that verse. So God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them male and female. Genesis 1:27. Now, this is an application verse where, as they're looking at the mirror and they see their own image, they will know that God created them in his image. They're not just seeing themselves, they're seeing God too. And that's the whole purpose of this activity, to help them to understand that we are created in the image of God. Each one of us uniquely different, but each one of us in his image and just as he planned. So we pray that that verse would be a fun activity for your kids to do to help them to learn. We also have another activity that will help the kids to learn about the key passage that is also featured on week number 1, and it has to do with creation. And so the creation story is found in Genesis 1:1 through 2 verse 3. And so the activities that we have in that regard are going to be found in resources kit item 1B, C, and D. And here's how that's going to look. You will need to copy these pages onto cardstock. Items B and C are these items, and this is going to be a creation wheel. And so if you'll copy those onto cardstock and then either cut those out before the kids get them or allow them to cut the papers out, then the next process would be for them to use markers or colored pencils or whatever choice you would like for them to then use that item to help them to remember what God created. And so this is the finished product where we have colored the 2 sheets, and you can color before or after you assemble it. But the way that it would work is that you would use the little brass brad, and I would suggest that the 1/2 inch, that would work best, but you would simply have these 2 pieces, and you would make sure that you did cut out that triangle piece on that first section so that it reveals what's on the second part. But you would take the brad and you would carefully punch through the first part, and then you would lift up the second portion and you would carefully punch through on that second part to create your creation wheel. And then folding it back, and then you can talk about what God has created on each one of those days. Now, it says on the very first one, in the beginning God created, and then it moves to day 1. And in that number 1, then they would draw what God created. They could use their Bibles to look up, what is it that God created on day 1? Well, we know that God separated light from darkness. That's what he did on day 1. And then on day 2, God separated the skies from the water. And so they can create that in their number 2 to help them to remember that. And then on day 3, the Bible tells us that God created land. So he separated the land from the waters, and he created oceans and lakes and rivers and streams, and then he created land that had trees and plants. So they can draw that image within the letter, or within the number 3. Then on day 4, God created the sun, the moon, and the stars. So they can draw that in number 4. On day 5, God created the birds for the sky and the fish that swim in the sea. And then on day 6, the Bible tells us that God created animals and he created people too. So they can draw those images, whatever they would like, in those numbers to help them to remember. Then on day 7, God rested. So whatever they want to draw in the number 7 to help them to understand that God rested on that day and he was pleased with all that he had created. So this would be their creation wheel. It would be a great way for them to use this to share that great news of how God created the world. Share it with their friends and other family members. Another tool that we have as well would be the coloring page. It's item 1D. And the way that it works is the same premise as in the color in the creation wheel, is that they would draw their designs within those numbers. Now, the thing that I thought was unique about this was the fact that on day 1, God created the light and the dark, separated those two. And then on day 2, God separated the skies from the water. And on day 3, God created land. So he separated the land from the waters and created plants and trees and those kinds of things. Then right below, on day 4, God created the sun, the moon, and the stars. Well, that relates very well to day number 1, doesn't it? Because of creating light and dark. And so these were the lights that he used to bring light and darkness. And then on day number 5, God created the birds that fly in the sky, and he created the fish that swim in the oceans or in other lakes and streams. And then on day 6, God created the animals, and he created people that roam around on the land that he created. So they're uniquely positioned underneath the numbers where God created the light and the dark here, and then he created the sun, the moon, and the stars. I thought that would be a great way for kids to remember that information. And then on day 7, well, 7 is laying down because 7 is resting. And just a fun way for kids to remember what God did on day number 7. So we pray that these activities would be a great way for your kids to be engaged in learning the verses and to help them to apply them to their everyday lives. So we hope that it's been helpful to you and that you guys have a great time creating these different crafts and being involved in these activities and learning these verses. We'll see you soon.